Growing up, I remember being told to step out of my comfort zone, to do things I may or may not like. And in doing these things, I've developed experiences that allow me to make knowledgeable decisions and appreciate the life around me. Today, I'm going to share with you three stories of the most life changing experiences I remember. During elementary school, I attended a summer camp in Black Mountain, and in the final days of camp, we were given an option to either go on a hike or do other activities, such as swimming, archery, or ziplining. I don't know what compelled me to choose to hike, as I had never hiked before. As when we began to ascend the mountain, I realized that I had made a decision that my body would soon regret, but it was too late to turn back. As we climbed, I noticed that I slowly started to lag behind the other campers, and my breaths got heavier with each painful step. I remember looking up and seeing the campers' backs as they slowly left me behind. The counselor that decided to stay behind and comfort me on my hike eventually offered to walk me back. That's when something inside me clicked. I didn't want to be the only person to have failed the hike, the only person to walk shamefully down the mountain. I wanted to do more. So I lifted myself up, and with a sobby, cracked voice, I said, "I'll finish the hike." Eventually, I made it to the top of the mountain where there was this really amazing view, but I didn't really care about the view. I cared more or less about the experience in hiking and the painfulness of hiking up the mountain. The second story is of when I first killed a fish. Now, if someone would have told me that spending hours on the waters just to catch a handful of fish was fun, I would have called them crazy. The first time I caught a fish, I didn't know how difficult it was to end a life. When I grabbed the fish, ready to bonk it with a rock, I noticed that my hands were shaking and I could feel the anxiety creeping up. My heartbeat began to get faster and faster, and I stared at the fish for what felt like minutes. Before, when I decided to take the rock and bonk the fish, it took me a couple tries before I had successfully killed it. After that traumatizing experience, I promised myself to make sure that I would honor any life I took by not letting it suffer. Because of this experience, I try to make sure I'm always grateful for anything and everything I take from the wild. My third story is of when I first went mountain biking. The first time I went mountain biking, I was very anxious and very scared because it was something I've never done before. I was afraid of something happening to me, such as falling down the mountain or dying or something crazy like that. Eventually, my worst fear came true. I ended up falling down a hill and slid down for about what felt like 10 feet. Luckily, I only had a couple bruises and scratches on myself, but the pedals on the bike were bent, and that frightened me because it wasn't my gear. Eventually, we found out that the suspension on the bike was locked and my gear wasn't set up properly. And from that, I've learned to always check my gear and do a little bit more research of how equipment is properly used before I use it to help prevent any future accidents. Although experiences can be scary and stressful and anxiety inducing, they can be something we all learn from. And in learning from these things, we are able to do much better in how we take these experiences. For example, a mountain biker feels more relaxed and less stressful and less anxious when going down a mountain. A fisherman is able to appreciate life and feel less worried about taking another life and enjoying the fish and things around him. A hiker is maybe able to enjoy the hike a little bit better rather than to enjoy the end view of the hike.